welcome back. I'm Doug.
And I'm Pat.
Thanks for coming back to the Doug and Pat Show. You know, back in September of 2013, we did a show on the original and a reissue of the Marshall 18-watt combos. This is the reissue over here, one of the versions of it. And I guess they still make this amplifier because you can buy them new. Do you know where they're made now?
Not now. These original first run of them were made in England and hand wired. So this guy, I don't know where the original ones were made.
Thailand.
Thailand.
So we did a show on this, and we compared the two, and then we had a whole bunch of comments which we're still getting. People trying to guess, you know, what was it about them that made them sound different, because they definitely sounded different.
They did. And, you know, I think the new speaker maybe.
As one of the comments.
It was definitely one of the comments.
The grill cloth being thicker on the old one than on the new one. The fact that it's just an old amp, whatever that means. We don't really know what that means. We wonder if it would sound different if it was somebody bought it, let's say in 66, 67, whenever it was made, and they never played it. And would it sound the same as a new one if it had never been turned on and heated up? You know, the speaker had never been used. We didn't know. So what we thought we would do is we'd come back to this again. We'd bring them both back. And we're going to swap stuff out in them and see if we can reproduce the sound of the old one using the new one. And what would it take? And if that is a better sound or that's not a better sound. Pat got to use the 18 volts reversible drill.
And it's not a vintage one.
No.
It's a reissue.
It looks vintage though.
It does. And we took these things apart and compared them, you know, and just from the looks, physically, Marshall did a really, really good job of duplicating the original.
They look really good.
Yeah.
They look really good. So what we did, we started out by playing both of the amplifiers again, miking them this time with the Sennheiser microphone, because we found it gave the truest sound. And we played the two guitars through them. One is the Heritage 150 with the Tyson humbuckings that we picked up in the last roadshow. That was the show before this one.
Right.
Great sounding, high fidelity humbucking pickup. And then we also played a 1956 Les Paul Special, which you can see sitting over there, so that we could hear it with P90s also. Then we started swapping stuff out. We swapped out disconnected the speaker from the original and ran a line over to the new one, and so the new amp is driving the old speaker in the old box through the old grill cloth. We removed the tubes, changed all the old Mullard tubes that were in the old one in with the new one and did the same thing. Switched guitars, and then lastly, we ran the new one into the speaker in the cabinet, the old one into the speaker of the cabinet of the new one. I think that's what we did.
It's easy for you to say.
Oh, my head hurts. We working for you people. And just to hear if that old amplifier, what it would sound like through the new speaker, and so we could kind of have some characteristics of what the speaker itself was doing, because that's supposed to be the reissue of the 20 watt.
Right.
Yeah. So let's get to it. This first clip is just of the two amplifiers by themselves, so we can kind of get recentered again with the two different guitars. Here they are. Okay, so that's what they sounded like, kind of like in that first show that we did. That's just straight into them. You can hear the difference between the two amps. They sound different.
They do sound a little bit different, but they sound really good.
They both sound good. They both sound really good. Most people have found, like what we can hear here, which is good, is that the new one is brighter. The older one is darker sounding and potentially sweeter sounding. Majority of the people prefer the older one to the new one. Finding an old one, 18 watt, 60s, is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do next is going to maybe make that so that you guys, if you want to buy a new one, you can see if you can make it sound like an old one. It's much easier to find an old speaker or to work on the speaker than it is to find the amp. So this next series, the speaker was removable in both amplifiers, that is the jack.
Right.
So we disconnected them and we're running the old amplifier with the old tubes. No. What are we doing?
We're taking the old amplifier and running it into the new speaker. I got an idea.
Okay.
Why don't we try going the new amp into the old speaker only?
What'll that do?
It should warm up the amplifier a bit.
Well,
You would think.
Because the new amplifier sounds brighter,
Yes.
and according to a lot of folks out there, not as warm as the old one.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So not only are we running it into the speaker, but into the cabinet, the whole thing, which includes the grill cloth. So some of the discussion was that this grill cloth on these original mini Blues Breakers guys was real thick,
Yeah.
and it could have a dampening effect on the sound. And so we're going to run the new amp into that so that that takes into consideration the cabinet, the speaker, and the grill cloth.
There you go.
Yep.
That's it.
Let's hear that.
Let's do it. Sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds different, doesn't it?
Does
I don't know if we've really nailed it yet, though. What we're not going to do is we're not going to unsolder the components out of the amplifier, because the guy that owns this amplifier will probably be watching this video and he'll probably come and get us. But what we are going to do is we're going to take next the old tubes, the old Mullard made in England tubes that are in the old amp, and we're going to put them in the new amp.
right.
The tube configuration is the same, including the rectifier tube. So the electronics that basically aren't soldered in are now old in the new amp, running it into there.
Yeah, still running it into the old speaker and the old speaker cabinet. So that is probably about as close as you can get to any kind of a comparison between the amps themselves, running the, whatever he said.
Whatever we did earlier. Also, we might mention that we switched the output tubes in the old amp when we first fired it up. It had some newer tubes in it. Some Russian made something, and they were making some noise. And the owner still had the original Mullards. which they had tested out and they tested good. So we put those tubes back in it, and there was an audible difference between those two tubes.
Yep.
So the original ones, the old ones, are the ones we're using in both amplifiers, and now they're in that one. So here we go. Here's this comparison. You know, I would rather hear from these guys of what they think that they hear, the difference, rather than what we hear, and then we can tell them if they're wrong or not. No, I think it's, the Sennheiser that we're using does a really good job of sounding just like what it sounds like in the room. We're close miking the amplifier, running it into Pro Tools. No compression or EQ. Putting a digital reverb on it just to put it in a room, because otherwise it sounds kind of odd. So now we're going to take and put all of the components back into the old amplifier. And we're just kind of wondering, if we took the old amplifier, and if the reason that it sounds different is because of the speaker and the grill cloth and the box, why don't we take the old amp and run it into the box and the speaker of the new one and see what that sounds like?
Okay.
And that's what we did, also with those two guitars. And then after that, we're going to run a series of them one after another, kind of cross-fading so you can sort of see what they do. So let's hear what this guy sounds like. Off we go. So there you go. You asked for it and you got it, that Marshall comparison again. I hope we got closer to coming up with some information that might be helpful in figuring out if these reissue amplifiers are really good reissue amplifiers or they're just cosmetic reissue amplifiers. There's almost no other way to really do it other than that, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
I think they both sounded really, really good. The thing I like about them is they're small, compact, easy to move around, lightweight, and they just sound great. So
They also have tremolo,
Yep.
which you can hear in the first show
yeah,
we did back in September of 2013. So if you want to hear that, you might as well see that show if you haven't seen it. Next up, I think we're going to try and finally get to do those practice amps from the 50s and 60s. They need to have one output tube, not two. So we have Champs, we have AC4, we've got Gibson Les Paul amplifiers, small ones. We have all kinds of fun
yeah,
stuff.
a little Epiphone.
Epiphone amplifier. That'll be show number 1, and we're going to do a whole bunch of them. Visit our website, thedougandpatshow.com. You see it running on the bottom of your screen here. For all the shows, merchandise, make Doug and Pat rich. You guys need to get on that, because we could use some gas money around here.
We're not getting any younger.
Our Turbo Bentleys cost us a fortune, so you can get on that. You can get the new Doug and Pat Show t-shirts with the large logo, the small logo, the hat. Get them all. So we look forward to doing those shows for you in the future.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for stopping by. I'm Doug.
And I'm Pat.
See you next time.
Bye.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks. So we had to go back. This is complicated.
When he was talking about the new ones being brighter, we weren't talking people here.
No.
That's a, you know.
We definitely were not that. All right.